Yeah, you. You ever wonder about what it means to be a chud? Huh? What an actual chud is? Because you're not a chud, I'll tell you that much. You think you're a chud? You're not a chud. I'm a chud. I'm a chud. I'm a cool chud. I'm a real chud. You're like a fake chud. You're eating the goy slop. You're doing all that stuff, okay? Me, I'm a Hyperborean, okay? I'm a Hyperborean. You're kind of more, I don't even know how to describe you, dude. You're like a golem. You're like an NPC. But don't worry. I'm going to wake you up. We're going to go over the Chud Iceberg. And by the end, you'll be a real Chud. Just like me. You'll be smart, sharp as a tack, you know? You'll be somebody, you'll be ungovernable. You'll be someone to contend with. All right, let's do this. Starting off strong, the Yes Chad meme. Everyone's seen this image. I mean, you just portray yourself as the Chad. You portray the enemy as the soy jack, okay, the crying soy jack. And that's it. That's how you win every argument. But this is fundamental to the Chud ethos, okay? To portray yourself as a Chad is just about as Chud as it gets, okay? In order to really understand being a Chud, you first have to understand the basics. And that's what this is all about. Entry 1 is just the beginning, okay? The Yes Chad meme, you're like, oh, this is basic. This guy is sort of, he might be an Archon or whatever. Like, not that you'd know what that is, but you will. By the end of this, you will. All right, but let's not waste too much time on the Yes Chad meme. Everyone's seen it. It's not a big deal. Let's move on. Okay. I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, this is it. This is entry 2. Just give me a second to explain some stuff, okay? You need a little baseline knowledge. These what are they? Gen Y? What are the young ones? I don't even know. It doesn't matter, okay? You need a baseline of understanding before you really get deep into this thing, okay? So the Pepe the Frog thing is important. It's very important. Why is it important? Because this is when the Chuds realize the power of mimetic images, okay, in a real sense. Back in 2015, 2016, we used Pepe the Frog so strongly that we won the presidential election. We're sticking with that story, actually. That's real. But we did. We did use it. We did, in fact, troll the libs with Pepe the Frog. They thought he was a racist symbol. They saw some funny edits of our green boy, and they got a little bit upset about it. They got a little bit triggered, okay? Pepe he's sort of just like the Yes Chad meme, in a way, a little bit of an older figure, I suppose, but sort of a similar entity. You put him in relatable circumstances, and everyone has their own, I guess, supposedly relatable Pepe image, but he's sort of used like that. But yes, back in 2015, 2016, the mainstream media was saying that Pepe the Frog was a symbol of white supremacy. And this really did start to wake up some people about the nature of mimetic images and the power that they hold. We were able to use Pepe to make them look like fools, to make them look like they didn't understand anything, because they didn't. They didn't understand anything. If they did, they would know Pepe, he's just a little fucking frog guy. He's not something to worry about. But he is, isn't he? Because he won us that election. We took it from them with the power of Pepe. Anti-woke. This is sort of like the Fox News type stuff right here. This is the baseline sort of right-wing stuff. I'm not woke. You're woke. It's like kind of like calling someone gay. You're gay. I'm not gay. You're gay. That's that sort of thing. If you're calling someone woke, you're insulting their manhood. Okay? They're trying to reclaim it with this dark woke thing, but that is also gay. Okay? Dark woke is like having a black guy fuck your girlfriend, but you don't let him buy the Switch or something. It's not, listen, don't be dark woke. Don't be woke in general. Be a chud. That's what this is all about. All right. So being anti-woke generally, I mean, do I really even need to explain this? I think even if you're an NPC golem type individual, you're probably going to know at least what it means to be anti-woke. You're going against these initiatives that are, I guess, how do I put this in a YouTube friendly way? They are giving people positions that they may not deserve based on factors that are out of their control, such as race or sex. Okay, that's what wokeness generally is. It goes a lot deeper than that, and we'll probably get into that when you're ready. When you're ready, we will get into that. And only when you're ready. If you can't handle that sort of information, I don't even know what we're going to do. Okay, if just I need to calm down. I'm getting worked up. You're not a listen, you'll get there. You just keep watching and you'll get there, all right? We need to build a wall. I know that wasn't the greatest impression of our Palandian speaking president, okay? You'll understand that later too. Don't you worry. But building the wall, okay, it's essential, and not just in some like esoteric sense. This is essential in a very real, very normie political sense. You have to enforce your borders. I know. I know. You maybe are kind of this strange, little left-wing, parasite guy who just wants to float between countries, but it's actually not allowed, okay? Why isn't it allowed? Because I say so. That's it. You're not coming in. This is actually my land. You're not allowed in. Me and my friend said no. So it's kind of like, it's kind of like locking your doors at night so you don't get robbed. It's kind of like that. I will let you into my house when I'm good and ready, but until then, if you try and come in, let's just say there's going to be some problems, okay? We'll leave it at that. You understand the importance of building a wall. I don't need to stick on this. TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. This is almost as serious as like AIDS, I would say. It's up there. It might actually be worse because when you think about it, AIDS, it kills you. TDS kills the entire country, so okay, that was a little overstated perhaps, but it doesn't matter. Okay, the point is TDS is so real, dude. It's so real. I'm sure you've seen it. You might even have it, which is worrisome. You're watching my video and you have TDS. But Donald, Big Daddy Donald, he'll say something like completely normal, completely like, oh, I love McDonald's, and everyone loses their mind. They're like anti-McDonald's, all of a sudden. As if a real chut, he's simply counter signaling, okay? He's trying to get people to eat the goy slop a little bit. His enemies, not us, because he knows we're smart enough to avoid that sort of thing. Obviously, we sidestep that, But, but, listen, okay? TDS is very real. I'm sure you've seen it. Honestly, he will do the most normal, average thing that wouldn't be controversial, 10, 15 years ago. But as soon as Trump does it, it's this giant controversy. It's this thing that has to take up every single square. I don't even know why I said square. It doesn't matter. It has to take up every single second on TV for like weeks because Trump did something. I guess, a good example of this, perhaps, in terms of just like pure media bias, would be like the Black Lives Matter riots versus January 6th. January 6th, one riot, okay? Admittedly, riots not great, but we literally just got done with the Summer of Love, where they burned down multiple cities and killed like 40 people. So it's a little bit of a different scale. Uh, Neither of them are good, I guess, but it is a different scale. And they barely covered the riots and constantly downplayed them and would literally side with the rioters when they did cover them. They'd be like, oh, well, this is the cries of the unheard, or whatever MLK said. That guy's a communist too. We'll talk about that. Maybe not here, but maybe another time. But, yes. TDS, big problem. Owning the libs. Possibly one of the best pastimes to ever come into existence, to ever start to be understood, to be posted on the internet, even. Because what you're really doing when you're owning the libs is what? You're sneed farming. You know, you're gaining their power. You're getting them so riled up by doing what? Asking one little question about crime statistics or whatever it is. Asking one little question about suicide rates or whatever it is. It's going to be, you know, it is your favorite pastime as a chud, you know, because it's so easy to do. Own the libs. Their worldview is based on falsehoods. You know, just you just you don't even need to listen to them. You barely even need to listen to them because what? All of their things that they're going to say to you are recycled, and you'll understand this once you reach a certain level of, you know, chudism. Their opinions, their arguments, entirely recycled. You've heard them on CNN and CBS and ABC and whatever else you watch, Saturday Night Live, Jimmy Fallon. You've heard all of their opinions already, and they're all stupid. And they're all so easy to dismantle with like the barest minimum of effort from you. So, yes, own the libs, own them. They have to be owned. Why do they have to be owned? Because if we don't own them, they're just going to keep thinking they're correct about everything. So you have to put them in their place. It's that simple. So this one is more of a tragic one. Based. Based used to be an exclusively chud thing. Just say based, you know. It'd be like, that basically just means correct. You're like, oh yeah, that's based. But now what, dude? Now the liberals are saying it. Now liberals, you know, they'll be like, building homeless shelters for the homeless and filling them with drug addicts. Based. You know, that sort of thing. Like, it's all this sort of cringe, you know, the millennials have gotten a hold of it, really. The cringe millennials have gotten a hold of it. You know, it was fine when the based ones had it, but not so much anymore. It's sad to see it leave. You know, I think it is falling out of favor because it's not quite as clear anymore when you say based if you're actually based or if you're like an NPC golem individual. So you need to, I guess, caveat that a little bit, give people a little bit of a heads up in terms of what side you're really on. You have to signal that in some way before you drop based. Okay. It might be obvious based on the circumstance, but either way, I just don't like it when liberals appropriate our stuff. They do it all the time, and then they say, you know, I can't put cornrows in my hair because that's racist or whatever. How about you stop using based? That's our word, dude. You kidding me? Trad wife. Yeah, we all know about the trad wife thing. So the issue with this is that it's a little bit of a psyop. It's a little bit of a psyop. Trad wives don't really exist very much anymore. Now, why is that? Feminism, really. They've been liberated out of the kitchen or whatever they say. It was never exactly like that, so that's all kind of a gaslight too, but not to be a white woman, but it is. Trad wife now is mostly just like a LARP. They're just like making stuff up for the most part. They do exist. And I would say a real trad wife is probably just like a stay-at-home mom nowadays, who's still making that work. But the ones who are like posting online, the ones who are like wearing their 1950s aprons and like baking cookies and just so happen to be, you know, shaking their bazongas or whatever you want to call them in front of the camera, and then they have like an OnlyFans or whatever. Yeah, that is actually not a trad wife. That is actually like a e-thought, and you have to stay far away from women like that. Why? Because they're gonna loosh farm you. They're gonna take your power. You don't need that. They're gonna take all that you could be right from you in a certain way that I won't get into right now. We'll talk about it when you're older. But just stay away from e-whores. You don't need them. You don't need them, okay? Leave them far behind. Go find a real woman. It's actually not that hard. That is also a gaslight. It is actually not that hard, I promise. So trad wife leads us directly into the next one. Feminism is cancer. Why is it cancer? It rotted our civilization. Many have said that a civilization has never survived giving the right to vote to women. I don't know about that. I haven't looked into it enough. But, you know, it hasn't happened very often throughout history. I will say that. But let's not even go that far. The consequences for feminism have been catastrophic for our civilization, that's for sure. The abortion thing, the OnlyFans thing, the the whole divorce thing. I mean, there's so many. You could just list it on and on and on. You'll be like, well, that isn't necessarily feminism. And you're right. It isn't necessarily feminism that caused those things. Except for it kind of was. We're encouraging women to do these things via feminism. We're saying that sex work is empowering. It's not. It's exploitative. It's reducing women down to what? Their body. That's it. I find that disgusting personally. I think women, I'm a big woman defender now. I think women are actually extremely powerful mage-like creatures in some way. You know, they understand emotions in a way that men typically do not. And that's not to say men don't ever understand emotions on this level, but women are much more in tune with that sort of thing. They're also much more in tune with like the social complexities around them. That's definitely something that I've noticed as well. Women are a very, very important aspect of humanity and they deserve to be respected. But also, men need their respect, and also women need to show respect to men, and men need to show respect to women. We're in this together. We're yin and yang on this. We're two halves of a whole, and I think we need to sort of embrace our traditional roles that come natural to us. And not everyone's gonna be, the macho man. That's not what I'm saying. I think just by, I guess, standards, though. Like the standard man, the standard woman, the generalized man and woman, they have typical tendencies. And I don't think we need to avoid those. I don't think men being more physical is bad. I don't think men being traditionally more aggressive in certain ways is bad. They all have to be tempered in certain ways, and women have to be tempered too. I just think we've been encouraging women to be completely untempered, to be completely unleashed. Uh, and we just tell them that they're doing great and they're the best thing since sliced bread all of the time. It's not helping us as men. It's not helping them as women. It's bad for everybody, and we need to come together and understand that we're supposed to work together. We are the yin and yang, okay? We are that. We need to stick together. We need to help each other out. Second Amendment. Oh boy, do I love guns. Oh boy, do I love guns. Oh boy, do I love guns. You can't let the liberals take the guns. Why? I'll tell you why. Because as soon as you're disarmed, they will take everything. Everything. Guns are the last line of defense against everything they want to do to you. As long as you're armed, they are scared. And as soon as you're disarmed, they are no longer afraid. They can do whatever they want against an unarmed populace. We've seen it time and time again. You don't want that. No one wants that. Not really. They might think, oh, think of however many, whatever is going on, shootings, whatnot. Okay, that's all a gaslight. And I'm not saying those shootings didn't happen. They did happen. They're tragic. It's awful. However, what I will say is that they're trying currently to get the AR-15 banned really, really hard. This is their main driving thing. And they'll talk about, oh, well, it's used in all these shootings. But if you look at the numbers, actually handguns are used way more often, but they're not pushing for handguns. Why? Because they're starting with something they think they can get away with, and then they will move to something even smaller than that. Even if it doesn't line up with the data, because the data doesn't matter. It's all politics. It's all about getting you disarmed, honestly. That's what they want. They don't want anybody to have guns. They're starting with the guns they think they can get you to give up, but they're never going to stop. So keep your head on straight. Do not give them your guns. Not a single one of them. Don't do it. We shouldn't have given them the guns or fully automatic weapons. We should have kept those. Those are ours. I want an Uzi now. Okay, now. Every cool guy in every movie and video game has an Uzi. Why not me? Because I'm not cool enough? I refuse to believe this. This could not be true. All right, my little chuds and chudettes. We've made it to layer 2. Okay? Hopefully I've awoken some of you to some great truths on the way down. But now, the real fun begins. The insanity starts. And this is where you truly start shape-shifting. I've maybe only made you like a normal conservative or whatever. No, no, no. Now you're going to look like the thing from the thing. The thing from the thing. Okay? That's you because you're going to start shape-shifting into a chud. You're going to start understanding things on this sort of deeper, kind of more, you know, hyper-sigillarian level, okay? Just making up words. Don't worry about it. We're going to get into it right now. Layer 2. Let's go. Okay, I'm not actually sure if YouTube will let me say this next one. I'm going to be very subtle about it and see if we can get away with it, okay? And then I will be talking about some actual numbers in regards to it, okay? It's the Schmate rematement, okay? Do you understand what I'm saying? You'll probably catch on regardless, okay? So here's the deal with the Schmate rematement, or whatever I said. Doesn't... It's kind of real in terms of a number sense, but the liberal media doesn't really want to talk about that. They just want to boil it down to go like, oh, everyone's the same. It doesn't really matter if white people are down from 1990, 76% of the country, and are now 60% of the country, and are like projected to be a minority by the year like 2050 or 2060. They think that that doesn't matter because everyone's the same. This is why they are stupid. Not everyone is the same. They have different cultures. This does affect things. Okay, it does affect things. If people come together here and they start to outnumber what was traditionally the dominant culture, and this can be any nation. You could say this about an African nation or an Asian nation too. It doesn't matter. It's just as, I guess, natural that this would occur. When a new nation basically moves in and they start having disagreements politically, that is going to cause problems, and that is going to lower the native population's power in the region. And there is going to be conflict because of that, whether that is like actual physical conflict or whether it's worked out politically. It depends on the scenario itself. But the idea of the Schmate rematement or whatever is that this is happening on purpose, and it kind of might be. It kind of might be. There's a reason that Democrats want to move these people in so very badly and do it constantly. It's probably because these people vote for them at numbers that are not even close. Like they vote for them so much more than they vote for Republicans. In fact, they're 2 times as likely to say the Democrats represent them over the Republican Party. So that just tells you that. That's a big number. 2 times? That's a big number. So yes, there is a concern with, I guess, a general sort of culture clash here and possibly a civilizational disagreement, we'll say. So yes, that is the general idea of the theory. It goes a lot more into that. If you know you're a little more schizo, we can start talking about reptilians or something like that controlling everything, or you know, another group of people controlling everything. Whatever floats your boat, there's a theory for everyone on that. But I think, honestly, it's probably a lot more simple than that. It's okay to be white. This was a 2017, again, epic mimetic sort of spell casting moment from 4chan, Poll, you know, the boys, the fellas. And it was a troll. That's all it was. It was just posters that said it's okay to be white. And that was all there was to it. But it would upset people greatly, even though it was a statement of neutrality. So it sort of exposed people's, I guess, actual racism towards white people, that a statement like it's okay to be white would be looked at as some giant negative, like racist connotation thing, when it's not even saying anything besides it's okay. You could maybe see their argument if it was something like it's better to be white or something like that. You know, or more like actual sloganeering from white power groups or something. But it wasn't that at all. It was a troll to get them to react exactly how they did to a completely neutral statement. So again, spell casting moment from mimetic wizards on 4chan. Very, very smart stuff. Very high IQ stuff. Honestly, we should bring back more of this trolling. I think the reason it sort of fell out of favor is because things have gotten a little too serious now, and we're not really in the mood to be trolling anymore. It's completely obvious to everyone. So the point's already been proven. Why do it again? Another one I'm not sure I can actually say on YouTube, but we're gonna attempt be slick with it. Okay. Base Bealism. Okay. This is the idea that there is genetic differences between races that play a role in, I guess, everyday life in some way. There's some interesting studies we have on that. They're not entirely conclusive, but there is some pretty clear differences physically that are pretty well concluded. Um, not just in terms of like look, but also in terms of like muscle fiber differences, susceptibility to diseases, things like that. There are genuine racial differences with things like that. The behavior stuff, not as well understood, not as much scientific data looking into that, probably because it will literally end people's career. Very well known guy who wrote The Bell Curve first talked about racial differences, among many other things in that book. But he had one chapter on racial differences, and it ended his career, basically, and everyone called him a racist, even though he was kind of just looking at the data and wasn't trying to be racist in any sort of way. So, yeah, look into this for yourself if you're interested. I can't say too much about it on YouTube either way, but the data is out there. You can definitely look at it. Diversity is a code word. This is essentially true. When people say diversity, they don't mean white ever. In fact, literally never ever. If it's a group of black people, they will never ever say they need to put a white person in for it to be diverse. That's not really something anyone has ever said. When people say diversity, they simply mean this place is too white and it needs more black and brown people or women or whatever else. It is always certain groups that they deem to be not in power, that they deem to be the permanent victim class. They need to be shown off more. They need to be more included in things, and there needs to be more diversity. They never mean that about men, especially white men or white people in general, unless they're a woman. Basically, white guys, your diversity does not matter. Your whatever you think, whatever you bring to the table or whatever, your diversity is not good diversity. It's actually bad diversity. So maybe tone it down a little bit and stop invading our black and brown spaces, you cracker. All right, next up is white Sharia. Again, another meme post that maybe some chuds took a little bit too seriously, but it's essentially a meme. It's just a backlash to, I guess, Sharia law generally that is kind of more about, you know, the white guy is going to do it. We're coming back. We're going to, wear our crusader armor. We're going to fricking enforce our version of Sharia law. We're not going to allow the Islamic version to go down. So we got white man Sharia law instead. That's pretty much all there is to it. It's really not a complicated position. It's a joke. It's a joke. It didn't get as much mainstream. I guess the fish didn't bite the worm so much on this one as it did with like Pepe or like the OK hand signal or whatnot. But yes, this is just another meme. Nothing too serious. It's just to trigger people and make them angry. That's all. Pretty based. Pretty based. So this one sounds more like a joke, but it's actually quite serious, my chuds. Uh, Clown World. Clown World kind of sounds like one of those things where it's just like, oh, this is ridiculous. This is absurd. And it is to a certain extent. But I guess the big thing with Clown World to remember is that it can only be clownish if you believe that it should be another way. Correct? The world, if you're an absurdist, will seem perfectly normal. But if you think things should actually be another way, and, we should go back to older traditions and, enforce our laws, things like that, then Clown World is actually quite sad. You just point at it and maybe, laugh, put a little rainbow afro on a Pepe and call it a day. That's a clown, Clown World. But it is sad. It's kind of a defeatist attitude generally towards just the whole thing. It's kind of this like you point and laugh because you can't do anything, even though you think it should be another way. Clown world is, it's tragic at the end of the day. Rainbow-haired Pepe is tragic. He's a tragic figure. He is, jester-like in his nature. He knows that there's some slight darkness underneath him. He's not simply a clown. It's more of a jester world, isn't it? Really, really makes you think about things. Bugmen. So, this could be you right now. At least before you watch this video, right? Sort of a NPC, bugman, conformist. Eating the slop. Obeying the laws, Not the real laws, though. Like the laws of society that are unwritten. You're just a total conformist. You're staying within the political boundaries they want you in. You're not questioning anything. That's a bug man. He's not taking control of his life. He's not taking control of anything around him. He's refusing to exert any of his willpower. He's probably using it all on, goon bait online. It's not good. That's a bug man. He's eating at McDonald's every day. He's not, gaining power. He's not boosting his vril levels. He's not doing any of the things that, real chuds do. Now, this is the kind of guy you got to look out for. This is the kind of guy, you hope you can save. And I hope maybe I'm saving some bugmen right now by telling you all the truth, by keeping you informed and up to date on very, very important topics. But that's just a dream, It's maybe something I'm hoping for. Maybe I'm sort of willing it into reality with my own power, but man, you can't save every bugman, and possibly you can't save any bugman, but we might discuss that a little more later on. For now, just know that a bugman is simply a conformist, someone who's eating the slop, going day to day like a robot, like an NPC, like a golem. It's all this sort of the same thing. But this is an important vocab term that'll come up on your test, so I hope you remember it. All right, Groiper Army. You probably know what a Groiper is. It's just a follower of Nick Fuentes, our Catboy-loving mentor, It's a joke. He's not my mentor. He's not my mentor, but he does love Catboys. Well known. But the Groiper Army thing that's just his followers, basically. But they would do a lot of trolling back in the day. They would go to, like, Turning Point events. That aged poorly, right? And they would troll Charlie Kirk, try and troll, like, Ben Shapiro, people like that. It produced some funny clips sometimes, but honestly, I think it did more harm to the movement than good. I think possibly Nick regrets sicking his groipers on Charlie, especially after Charlie was assassinated so terribly recently. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to say about him and his army of catboys. We'll keep this one short and sweet. Honkler, it is the Pepe image I mentioned earlier. Just our little clown Pepe, Again, just the insignia of clown world, I suppose you could say. He's a very valuable tool in the Chud's arsenal, if a little outdated now, but he's still a classic, still important for you to learn his symbology and his mimetic sort of sigil power, Keep those things in mind. Spot them where you can and use them when it is applicable. So here we got Doomer, which is essentially a defeated Chud. This is a Chud who's given up, Chud who's on his, he's in his winter arc, perhaps. I don't know how else to put it. In the Spenglerian sense, he's definitely entering his winter arc. But he sees doom everywhere he looks. Okay, this is someone whose spirit has been defeated. He is not, he's given up on his own will. He's given up on power. He's given up on changing things. He's just completely and utterly defeated by the world. He's convinced nothing will change. Nothing he can do will stop anything. All that. Okay, that is a doomer. It's very sad. No one wants to be a doomer, but a lot of people end up a doomer. It usually is not something you choose. It is simply a direction you find yourself moving in. I definitely have more doomer qualities myself at times. You want to try and avoid doomerism. You want to try and make changes. You want to try and do things, but sometimes the doomerism hits hard. Certain thing will go down and hits you, it devastates you. You sort of think, oh, there's no fixing this. Or you look at the numbers sometimes, you're like, well, there's no way we're coming back from this. And sometimes it's hard to argue with the doomers, but what's the point in giving up? You have to fight until the last stand, right? That's the masculine dream. Fight till the last stand. So never give up. Never go full doomer. Always have a sliver of hope at least, okay? You need to coalesce that strength within yourself to keep moving despite how hard things may be, how devastating the world can be. Tradcaths and ortho bros. So the tradcaths and ortho bros, they're kind of pushed together here because they're pretty similar. They're both searching for something with actual like long-standing value that is outside of modernity. They're all trying to escape modernity, and they're doing that by going back to older institutions like the Catholic Church or the Orthodox Church. And they're kind of similar in terms of vibes. They're always posting like Wojaks of Crusaders for the Tradcaths or like Wojaks of the priests for the Orthodox people. They're always posting monastic chanting and stuff like that. Like they're pretty similar. It can just come off as a little bit LARPy sometimes, I would say, is the only issue. But overall, you can't hate on them too much. I mean, they're getting into church. They're getting religious. They're getting interested in escaping modernity's traps and getting into some more sublime and meaningful parts of life that aren't just about hedonism and consumption. So, can't hate on them too much. LARPing can be a little much, as I'm sure we've all seen, but just another step down the Chud Iceberg. You'll see that they're very, very far from the most off-putting people. But yes, they can come off as a little bit LARPy, that's for sure. All right, the anti-vax red pill. So we'll take you back to 2020 for this one. It was really big at the time, as I'm sure you remember, because of COVID. It was kind of a big deal, this whole COVID thing. And people were really worried about the mRNA vaccine that they made for it, which was a newer technology and was kind of sketchy, and it appears to have definitely some side effects. And I think what really freaked people out was just the complete denial of side effects. Everyone was saying it was, perfectly safe. There's no way it's going to have side effects, which is, of course, not really possible. Every medicine is going to have side effects. Even vaccines is well known. But I think it kind of spiraled from there, for sure. People became more just skeptical of vaccines generally, more skeptical of the medical industry generally. And, people entered the previously existing vaccine skeptical community, I guess you could say. And, we got into things like silver being in the vaccines with old RFK, and he became rather big at the time because he wrote a book on it, and he wrote a book about Dr. Fauci and how, he was not that great of a guy and how he did some pretty big missteps medically, to say the least, and that he was pretty problematic. And now more recently, it's been revealed that basically all the conspiracies about COVID were correct, but we'll probably get into that more later down the iceberg. The last thing I'll say about this one is that it was definitely a turning point for a lot of people in terms of like the conspiracy stuff online. COVID in general was that for a lot of people, and particularly the vaccine stuff, because of how much was coming out about it and how much they were saying about it that turned out to not be true. Of course, they told us it was going to stop people from spreading COVID, which turned out to not be true either. So that's a little concerning, right? They're like, hey, it's going to not spread COVID anymore once you get this vaccine. So everyone needs to get it. And then it turns out that wasn't true. So definitely a big turning point for people turning against the regime and kind of starting to doubt things. Big one here for a lot of chuds online. A lot of them started out right here with the COVID vaccine. Crypto freedom. So this is a pretty simple one. It's just basically about cryptocurrencies being used to escape our fiat banking system that we have here. People can essentially now exit typical modern banking and just use cryptocurrency primarily almost at this point. So they're basically trying to use it in order to escape our banking system and function completely separately from it. And that was kind of the whole point of Bitcoin when it started anyways, the cyberpunks or the cypherpunks made it. So this is kind of always what crypto has been about, is escaping our current banking system and being unable to be tracked. And this is kind of, I would say it's definitely leaning more on like the libertarian chud kind of idea of like, you know, escaping the government's watchful eye. Definitely more like a libertarian deal, but still very chud like, you know, trying to escape the more liberal government, the big brother, you know, seeing what you're doing constantly on your bank. And now they can't see anything with your crypto. Or at least for a while, that was the goal. Now I think they actually can see what you're doing or what they're doing with crypto online. So it's pretty sad. But, you know, for a while there, we had a good thing going. And it's still possible. We could definitely make crypto that is untraceable. I'm just not sure who's going to actually be the one to do it. Gym maxing. So gym maxing is maybe not typically seen by everyone as like a chud thing. It's definitely more chud light. I'll give you that. It's more chud light. But gym maxing, I think, is essential. Okay? If you want to be a true chud, you kind of got to be jacked. Kind of got to be powerful and fit. Because then, how are your enemies going to argue with you, you know? How are they going to argue with you that you're not awesome and correct about everything when your biceps are so big and you can run longer than them and lift more than them? What are the libs going to say to you? They're just going to cry because you're hot. They're going to be like, I can't call him an ugly chud anymore because he's jacked and epic, you know? Gym maxing, it's chud light. But I mean, if you look back, they've been calling like going to the gym like Nazi adjacent activity for years now. They've been calling, you know, going to the gym racist or, yeah, fascist in some way. I mean, there's no escaping it. Just embrace the gym lifestyle. Embrace it. Become powerful. Become unstoppable. You should want to look like the Doomslayer, dude. Get out there. If you want to be a true chud, you kind of got to be better looking than normal, right? Because people are going to actually listen to you if you're jacked. I'm sorry. It just adds credibility. It really does. If people think you got your life put together, like physically, if they can see that about you, that you're in good shape, they're more likely to listen to you, man. That's all there is to it. And also, you just owe it to yourself to be jacked. It's Hyperborean. It's like, you know, Bronze Age status. Just like be jacked. No one can mess with you if you're a big guy, you know? Get in the gym, gym max if you want to be a chud. Pronoun rejector. So, this one, I think you understand the concept. It's that nobody can tell you their pronouns, okay? And like, you're just going to listen to that. You're going to be the biggest chud in the room for this, for sure. Very few people have the balls to do it, you know? Have the balls to have someone go, actually, it's ma'am. And then you're like, okay, sir. You know? Because it's just so combative. And it is just easier to be like, oh, yes, ma'am. You know, totally soy out. It's definitely easier to do that. But if you're chud enough, and if you just straight up don't care, it's pretty based. I mean, you're not lying. It's coming from a place of not lying for most people, to be honest. Like, they don't feel comfortable affirming delusions, right? That would be the main thing here. They don't feel comfortable, like, lying to someone's face when they can so clearly tell it's not what they say it is, and they feel like they're lying to themselves too. So it's like you have to play into someone else's like crazy delusion. It's like if I say I'm 6'4" or whatever, you know, and I'm not 6'4", no one's gonna be like, so, would no one call me out on that? Like, I'm pretty sure the first girl I go on a date with, if my Tinder bio says 6'4", is gonna be like, hey, you're not 6'4". Like, probably one of her first comments would be that. So I think for a lot of people, it's just like a principled, I'm not gonna lie to someone like that. Even if they're like, hey, it's disrespectful that you don't lie, they see it a different way. It's disrespectful to lie about this. So it's definitely a chud move. It definitely is going to get you in a lot of like hot water socially, no doubt. But it is very chud. It's very it's very combative. It's very pushing back against the system 100%. And would I recommend it? It really depends on, I guess, what you got going in life. Um, if you have a career that's just starting out, maybe put your time into something else, in terms of being based, because you probably will get fired. You can push back in other ways, but, if it's that important to you, I would say build some form of a backup plan for your career. That's all I'm saying. It's not popular to be this based in public yet. So, I don't know. It depends on your life situation. All right. You've made it past the intro stuff for real. Now we get to the good stuff. Layer 3. I would consider you, no longer extremely, Gollum like, we'll say. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you in a certain sense. Uh, I know it's not easy to take so many red pills all at once, but it's good for you. It's going to make you stronger. It's going to make you a big, tough guy. So just sit back, relax, and enjoy the medication, okay? You know what I mean? Shit's about to get real on layer 3. Just mentally prepare yourself for that. The Cathedral. So this is Curtis Yarvin's idea. It basically is this concept, kind of a concept, kind of just like true, but it basically breaks down like this. So the education system and the government and mainstream media and NGOs, all of these groups are sort of working together to push this liberal progressive ideology, this secular ideology, and they're all working in tandem to push the same thing. They're not working against each other. They're all working together to push this one framework, and have been for quite some time. So the idea is that you can tie all these things together and just refer to it as like the cathedral, because it's this ruling institution over everything. They're not exactly separate if they're pushing the exact same ideology all of the time. That's the concept. They are all tied together in a certain way. Maybe not directly, but like philosophically, they're all pushing the same thing. So it doesn't really matter if they're tied directly together or not, if they're all pushing the same thing. So, yeah. The Dark Enlightenment. So, the Dark Enlightenment is also tied to Curtis Yarvin and Nick Land, who will probably be brought up again later. But it's tied to a few different people. It was kind of a more popular thing to talk about, I think, back in like 2016, 2017. People would talk about the Dark Enlightenment sometimes. But it's kind of this, I guess, this field of the current political, intellectual landscape, political landscape, that's kind of pushing back against traditional enlightenment, traditional liberalism, pushing back against ideas like democracy, egalitarianism, universal human rights, and like progress as an inevitable. And it's favoring things like hierarchy, tradition, and realism, It's kind of, because it's not just doing that for fun, obviously. It sees those ideas, those liberal ideas, as utopian, as not realistic, as not something that's actually achievable in any sense, or not something that will last very long in the way that it is achievable. It's doomed, essentially. So they're pushing back against these ideas because they think they don't work or are essentially built on lies. It depends on whatever part of liberalism you're talking about, the pushback against it. But this is generally new. This is I mean, it's not super new, but it's definitely newer coming to the mainstream. A lot of people have tied like JD Vance to this sort of movement, and there's something to be said about that. JD Vance has been known to sort of favor this movement in a way. So there is something to it for sure coming to the mainstream right now, and people are accepting their ideas a little more recently, although Yarvin, I think, is still mostly not accepted. He's like an interesting thinker, but I think a lot of people just disagree with his conclusions, I guess. But we'll probably get more into that as we get further into the iceberg. But yes, the Dark Enlightenment's kind of just a philosophical branch happening on the right now, for sure. Okay, you can read. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on YouTube, so we'll say Schmethno-State. Okay? You get what I'm saying. So this comes in a whole bunch of different flavors. What it comes down to basically is people want to be alone with other people like them as a nation, like Wakanda. Okay, it's just like Wakanda. Just think about it like that. Show a picture of white Ryan Gosling on the screen. There we go. That's it. That's what it's all about. Next entry, Black Pill. So this one I feel like is a little bit too low on the old iceberg here for it to make a whole lot of sense, but I'll explain it anyways. So the Black Pill is kind of like doomerism. It's just I guess it would be the start of your doomerism is when you take the black pill, you know. The black pill is basically like nihilism. You're giving up. It's all over. We're doomed. You know, we're all done for. Why even try? We're never going to win. We're never going to make any progress. It's becoming a doomer. Taking the black pill is becoming a doomer. So, it's really not much else to it. It's just sort of this like fatalist look at civilization. It's this we're never going to win. Nothing's ever going to get better. So why even try? It's that sort of thing. I'm sure you know some. You might be some. I'm a little bit of a doomer, I would say. You will learn my philosophy as we go along. I'll probably make a more longer form video about like what I think. But yes, the black pill, it shouldn't be this low on the iceberg, but it is, so that's all there is to it. Accelerationism. So this one has been getting a lot more popular online, I would say, in recent years. It's this idea that basically we have to speed up the decline of our civilization and help it crash and burn so we can build something new on top of it. That's what it generally is. It comes in multiple flavors. There's left-wing accelerationists and right-wing accelerationists. So it really is a mixed bag of like what is causing them to believe this. You know, they want to build their Christian utopia. They want their commie-scape or whatever. For chuds, obviously, it's like they want to build whatever their little chud heart desires. Obviously, like a right-wing utopia or something. Whatever it is chud land. Chudtopia. I don't know. It's whatever you want it to be, really, but it's all about the dream. Okay, it's the dream of like the current civilization ending, the current regime ending, and then you just replacing it with like you and your cool friends with whatever you have. It's fundamentally like the same thing as dreaming of the zombie apocalypse. It's not. Listen, I know it sounds really cool to be like, let's blow up the country and restart because it's fucked. It sounds cool to say that. I think if we collapsed, we would have a lot of fucking problems, and you probably would not be able to build Chudtopia. You would probably like starve to death or something. So that's not great either. Uh, accelerationism has its problems. Might do a long form video on the concept of accelerationism in the future as well, because it is gaining some steam on the right. MGTOW, otherwise known as men going their own way. This was really popular back in like 2016. It basically is men like swearing off women, except for like, I mean, some of them swear them off entirely, but mostly it's about swearing off women for like relationships. So you'll, you know, have some fun with them, but you're not going to marry them or anything. Mostly this is driven from skepticism of courts, because the courts are definitely very unfair to men in terms of like divorce or custody. That is 100% true. So that's mostly where it stemmed from. Is also just a reaction to feminism generally being really annoying at the time, and just being frustrated with the state of the dating market. It was kind of like this was like proto Andrew Tate type content back in the day. It's like women suck, women are annoying right now, they're bad, women used to be better, why can't we return, to how it was, sort of thing, back in like 2016. So a little bit more of a deep cut. They were kind of big at the time, I guess, but they were never the biggest, and they never got as big as like Andrew Tate or something, that's for sure. But a lot of that sort of like male rights movement stuff that became popular back in like 2020, 2021 with like Andrew Tate, um got its start here really with the MGTOW movement. All right, so this one's got some popularity going right now, mostly because of Clav and stuff like that, but it's been popular online for a bit. Physiognomy. Okay, it's basically just being able to look at someone's face and make judgments about their character. Listen, okay, there's definitely, I'm not gonna say it's 100% true, but if you're telling me you've never like just looked at someone and been able to just be like, they're weird, just based on how they look, and been correct, or like called something like that just based on how someone looks, sometimes you can just tell. Sometimes you can just tell something about them. Maybe you can tell they're a Chad. That's fairly obvious if they're a Chad. But like, you can just tell certain things by looking at people sometimes. Now I know you're probably gonna say, well, that's not necessarily true. You know, you maybe just been a coincidence or something. But I don't know. I feel like this is just kind of a lived experience thing. As the liberals say, it's kind of just something you have to experience to understand it. But there is some data about this that shows there's something to it. Not a lot. I doubt there's really that much data being like made about this topic generally. But from what we do have, there has been some correlation to being able to guess certain traits about people based on just their face. So there's some stuff to it. Definitely you should look into it a little bit. But I wouldn't like hang my hat on it or anything, but there's probably something to it. So this one's controversial, and I don't think I can actually say it on YouTube. So look at the screen. There it is. That's what it is. If you want to know what that is, you should look it up. That's all I can say about it. None. Or something like that. I don't actually know how to pronounce this one. I tried looking it up, and I couldn't really find it. But the concept is pretty simple. It's just like basically the god of nature representing like the natural order of things. And so this will be like used when someone is kind of being how do you put, like, against the natural order of things, I guess you would say. They're being delusional, maybe giving into like sort of liberal ideologies on like human nature, stuff like that, like just denying obvious truths, I guess you would invoke this. I can't say I've ever actually seen this in person, but it's on the Iceberg, so there we go. Exit over voice is a concept by Albert Hirschman. So he's basically saying that in modern societies, usually we favor exiting over voicing. So in basically we would rather abandon a problem than voice our concerns and actually try and deal with the problem. I think this is probably on the iceberg because this is something that chuds generally do, to be honest with you. They get very like black pilled about things, right? And then they're just like, oh, screw this. Like it's over. I can't fix anything. So they just leave. You don't really see this a lot with left wingers. They're constantly in the streets. They're constantly being activists, fighting for what they believe in. Right wingers, not like that so much. I think it is because we're more given to, you know, doomerism per se. We're more on that path of just like it's so over, why even try type ideas. So it's probably on here just because of that. Like we're just generally more like that, and possibly this is just something that a chud comes to his conclusion about. It's not worth fighting. Just exit. Try and build alternative structures instead of fighting for the ones we already have because they're so taken. Biological realism. I'm sure we've probably all heard of this at some point. It's just the idea that your genes are playing a large part in your behavior and what you can actually do in life, like your IQ and general aptitudes or perhaps inaptitudes, general, I guess, day to day lifestyle, stuff like that your genetics are determining these things. There's kind of a mixed scientific view on this. There's definitely certain things that, are biologically determined, but some of it is environmental. Some of it's a lot of it is just a combination of both. But we certainly at this point cannot deny that genetics are playing a large role in a lot of different aspects of personality and aptitudes and things like that. Your genetics are absolutely playing a role. And that's just this idea. A lot of more liberal thinkers generally tend to deny this because it ruins their like tabula rasa. Everyone's the same. Everyone can be, fixed. And just if they're just educated the right way, then everything will be fine and everyone will get along and blah, blah, blah. You've heard it like a million times. This is saying not quite, and it's more complicated than that. And perhaps we can't really do anything to, influence everyone in the way you're saying. That's not really like possible because people just have genetic factors that sometimes literally are completely out of their control. So, okay. Anti-Demitism, we're back on the Curtis Yarvin, Mencius Moldbug type grind here. So, Demotism generally is basically rule of the people, what it stands for. So anti-Demotism is obviously against that, and usually, now obviously that comes in many, many flavors, but in this specific context, they're usually pushing for like neocameralism. So they want like states to be run like corporations where people can freely leave them and try and go to a different state with better policies or whatever if that's what they want. This sort of thing like that, but they're run like by like CEO kings essentially. That isn't necessarily how it is all of the time, and every single idea anyone who's against rule of the people isn't necessarily always like that, but that's a very popular thing online right now. I will also say about this, they usually are pushing back against it because they see it as kind of rule by the lowest common denominator and that people are very given to manipulation. And so, in order to avoid that, we should probably just step away from democracy as a whole. Basically, they've done the math and figured in their eyes, democracy is not worth the trouble that it brings, the possible consequences of it, and it would be better to go with something more stable, possibly more orderly, and definitely more like structured than democracy can provide, just based on its very nature. It's very fickle because people are very fickle and things change really quickly, and are not super stable long term, and can kind of just be thrown about if the populace decides that they really, really want something really, really bad, then they're just gonna get it, basically. So yeah, that's anti-demotism. This is a certified chud classic, the cabal slash deep state. You'll often find people saying stuff about this. So there's like some truth to this and some like not so truth to this, in my opinion. Like a cabal, I'm not so sure about. I don't think there's a bunch of guys like sitting around in masks or whatever, like drinking baby's blood or whatever. I don't think that that is a thing. But the deep state, yes, there are like long-term government employees that are, powerful in their own ways. They're not elected officials. They're actually hired and are, deferred to on certain things. That is definitely a thing. Um, so there's some truth to it. There's some, like, I would say not true, but, bigger chuds than I would say. There's definitely like a room full of freaking scary people wearing like scary masks and eating babies or whatever they do. You know, it's it's a classic chud statement, though. The cabal, the deep state. It's like Alex Jones stuff. Cannot be missed. There's definitely a lot of people who do believe this to be the case. So I don't know. Go read up on it, I guess. There's probably plenty of people who will tell you it's definitely true. I, for one, think it's kind of a too easy of an answer to what's going on. I don't think it's quite so clean as they're just like a few bad guys in charge or whatever, and we just gotta, get those guys out, and then everything will be fixed. I don't think that's what's going on. So cultural Marxism is a really, really interesting and really big topic. I could not possibly cover all of it right now, but I'm going to give you like a little bit of a rundown on it, the general ideas. So, generally, the idea is that communists or left wingers or whatever you want to call them, leftists, we'll just say, have essentially for now they figured out that they can't do like a real economic, like, commie rise up, get the tanks out type takeover. So instead, they are trying to wage war through the culture. And this was all theorized by Antonio Gramsci. You can look him up. He's an Italian Marxist. And his goal basically was to, and it was later developed, the Frankfurt School. A lot of people, Herbert Marcuse, was involved with it as well. But anyways, the entire point was to kind of like erode capitalist culture, also known as like, Western civilization. And they would do that through introducing ideas into civilization that would kind of erode the long-standing traditional views on things and would try and replace it with more, I guess you could say, free-spirited ideas. So originally, for example, they were saying that, traditional sexuality, family, and authority, obviously, capitalism in general was, they were oppressive. They were repressing people. So this was like the kind of origin point of what we're seeing today with like modern day woke sort of stuff, like constantly talking about the oppressor dynamic in like the classroom or just in your day to day. It's always along the lines of like race and gender and sexuality and identity, rather than class, which class is still brought up for sure, but they're trying to do it in multiple ways now, because the original commie position was just the class. It's the proletariat. They need to, we need to rise up and take out the bourgeoisie or whatever. Okay, that was the original thing. But then they realized, hey, We don't have to just rely on class. We can also bring like race into this and gender into this and sexuality into this and like capitalize on that power and like turn everything into this oppressor oppressed dynamic. And that's pretty much the only way people view things traditionally. Um, so you can kind of see how this shifted. In my perspective, it definitely started before this, but it really took hold in like the 60s with the anti-war slash hippie movement. They started to take power in universities and in the media and at, corporations and government, that sort of thing. The government stuff is, it's related, don't get me wrong, but this is more about those sort of non-governmental institutions. The like the universities, the classrooms, the media, the movies you watch, all of that influenced by like leftist theory that's constantly pushing you to, I guess, move away from more Western traditional values and see them as like inherently bad, inherently oppressive, inherently evil, really, and start viewing things through this like racialist, uh, gender theory lens. Um, it really all just comes down to like gay race communism. Honestly, it really does. It it's not, I don't know why it's referred to as a conspiracy theory online, because it's actually like very clearly documented. If you do some research on it, go ask Grok or something. Grok will tell you all about it, I'm sure. But like there's a lot of really good videos on this on YouTube actually. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, Short Fat Otaku on YouTube, before he like went crazy leftist mode, made a video about Gramsci that was like really good and explained all of this in like a really good way. So, and it's long, but there's been many YouTubers who talked about this in extreme detail. This is just like a general rundown. This is like true. This is not like a cabal type thing. This is just like a spread of a general philosophy and political movement that you can clearly see spreading its like, I guess its appendages throughout civilization, starting like mostly post World War II and into the 60s, and it continued until like today when people started noticing it with the DEI stuff in classrooms, like the critical race theory stuff, the critical gender theory stuff. All of that is this. Like that is literally where this all started. Um, the political correctness stuff, like it's all related to Gramsci and uh this whole idea of cultural Marxism. So definitely look into this. This is something like you need to see. Even if you disagree, it's still very powerful to look into and see how exactly things were taken a hold of, how we lost so much ground, really. Schmite Benacide, that's what we're going to call this. So I would say generally, if you're looking at this from like a Chud perspective, it's linked to the Great Replacement theory and the idea that, you know, white people are being, let's just say, disincentivized from having children and disincentivized from like participating in civilization to the point of, pushing their traditions and values, kind of like the death of the culture, the death of I guess, yes, eventually like the people as a whole. It is interesting because everyone else would see this as a negative. No one's happy that Native Americans are kind of like, not to be negative, I don't want to say this to my native friends, but they're kind of dying out, right? There's not a lot of them left. A lot of them are doing like interracial marriages, and so eventually they're just not going to be around anymore, is the idea. And it's kind of happening also in America and in Europe to white people because of just the sheer amount of immigrants that have been imported, and just the absolute, I guess, the decimation of the white birth rate, you could say, for whatever reason, is what's leading people to call it a Schmite Benacide, not necessarily that people are getting shoved into silly little chambers or something. Not really that. That's not what people are saying when they say this. It's more like a concurrence of many different aspects of civilization, mostly related to the immigration and I guess slow dying out of generally white culture, and like the constant like being looked down upon or like lesser because you're like not diverse or whatever. That's why people are saying it's this thing, and I guess it's definitely hyperbolic statement, but if like a Native American was saying there was like a native genocide happening and this was like their reasoning, I don't think a lot of people would like disagree with that. I wouldn't say like you could disagree with the hyperbolic nature of it, but it's hard to disagree when you actually see the numbers and see that, oh yeah, like in 2050 white people are going to be a minority in America. That's pretty crazy to think about, and it's probably just going to like get worse from there. So just like extrapolate that down the line and think what happens by like 2100 even. That's really not that far away. Um so it is weird to think about, the whole country used to be like vast majority white, and now it is slowly becoming vast majority like minority. So that's that's interesting at the very least. Look into the numbers, look at, and you can figure it out yourself. I believe in you. You, my little chud, will figure this out. Okay, so we talked about this a little bit with the Pepe the Frog thing. This is meme magic. So there's there's a few types of examples of this, really. We're going to mostly focus on Kekistan and Pepe, uh, but also sick Hillary. So people were editing like Hillary Clinton being sick during the 2016, uh, you know, election season, and they were semi-accurate. So some people were saying that it was like a magic spell almost. It's like chaos magic type stuff. We're just like speaking these things into existence. And it's the same with like the Pepe thing. Donald Trump like retweeted Pepe stuff during the 2016 election season and all that. So it's like it's this idea that you know you can put these sorts of memes out there and they have like an actual influence and will actually do things in the world and not just be like shit posts online. So it's semi-ironic, definitely. Like most people do not believe they're actually casting magic spells. But then, you know, I say that, and then there's witches trying to curse Trump, and then, the chuds use our counter magic to like make that not happen. We try and cast we use our Vril, we use our Loosh, and we cast spells against the witches to, help Trump get away from that sort of thing because we don't really like that. We don't like when they try and kill our president at all with their witch magic, so we have to, get rid of those. Get rid of the witches. We have to use our magic against them. So, yes, meme magic is real. I'm sorry to say. And the right is winning the magical war. I know there's a lot of witches on the left, but we have a lot of warlocks and wizards over here on the right. So, I can't say I'm too impressed with the magic I've seen from the left. I've been cursed a few times and really hasn't done much. Just like rudimentary spells and wards can keep them away from you, really, if you know any of what you're doing. So, yes, look into meme magic. Look into, uh, you know, controlling the world with your shit posts online. I promise it'll work, okay? Okay, so we're going to do a little quick overview on this one, just as a little treat for what's coming next, right? So right-wing occultism is a pretty broad topic, but for now, I will just say that it mostly focuses on us being stuck in the Kali Yuga or Dark Age and using, I guess, divine interventions of sorts, more magic, straight up just magic, in order to either overthrow the current Dark Age and return to like a more Bronze Age, like traditional mindset, or using left hand path tactics to kind of gain control over the world in some way, rise up through the ranks despite the world being fractured. So it depends on who you're talking to. A lot of it has to do with like runes and stuff like that. A lot of crossover with like Norse stuff, a lot of crossover with more like Eastern stuff, like Indian, a lot of Indian crossover, Indian occultism. So, yeah, just a very brief overview here, because we're going to cover a lot more of this stuff generally coming up here. Obviously, everyone knows about like Himmler's thing during World War II. He really was a fan of the occult. A lot of that is overstated, I will say, but he was actually a real fan. That is not a lie. So that about wraps this up. For now, this is the first half of the iceberg. So if you did enjoy this, definitely subscribe. The part 2 is going to be pretty fucking insane. I'm not even going to lie to you. It gets a lot more in depth. I'm going to have to do a lot of research for it. So I'm sorry if that takes a little longer because of that. But I just kind of got to do what I got to do on that one. I hope you have a great day. Please remember to, like, comment, and subscribe, as they say. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching. If you did actually get through this whole thing, actually leave a comment because you might deserve like a reward or something. Uh, but yeah, thanks so much. Have a great one.